Planet Dolan.
From creepy clowns to being attacked by a gargoyle, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from our subreddit about the worst nightmares we've ever had. My name is Nixium, and today, I'll be your narrator. Number 9 was submitted by SovereignofSabers. Honeybits was in a dark house at night, and was supposed to be meeting up with some others so that they could investigate the supposedly haunted house. She couldn't find anyone though, and was all alone in the home. There was a maze of dark hallways, and Honeybits had this constant feeling of being watched. Around her, she could hear chuckling and giggling and knocking on the walls. Honeybits saw a glass door to the outside and rushed towards it to the exit. However, it suddenly locked in front of her. Shocked, she turned around, and the ghost of a little girl was standing right there whispering, "No, no, no," over and over. She freaked out and ran back down the hallway, and as she did, the walls began to morph into eyeballs that went in and out of the walls, staring at her. There were huge mouths with sharp teeth that would appear to try and bite her. The floor started to roll like there was an earthquake. Honeybits fell and started crawling and stumbling around. There was maniacal laughter all around her, and she could even hear a chainsaw getting closer. She got extremely dizzy and fainted before getting absorbed by a wall. When she woke up, Honeybits was laying in a bed in a small gray room. It was quiet and calm, and then she realized that there was no door. She started to panic but realized that she was paralyzed. The walls started closing in on her, and from the corner of the room, a huge demonic face formed and stared right at her. It just laughed and laughed at her as the walls got tighter and tighter until they crushed her to death, and only then did she wake up. Number 8 was submitted by NiketasLeopard. When Kyle M was little, he had a bizarre nightmare where he was in the middle of an empty road. He saw a girl standing not so far from him, wearing a long white dress covered in dirt, and her hair was covering her face. She was looking down and crying. He shouted, "Are you okay, miss?" But no reply came. He turned his back, and in horror, he heard the girl's voice say behind him, "I miss him." When he turned his head, the girl's face was right next to him. Her face was so traumatizing. Her eyes were open while smiling. Kyle M ended up waking up screaming. He jumped out of bed and went to his parents' bedroom with watery eyes. His mother immediately hugged him and said he could sleep with them that night. Number 7 was submitted by 9Kirby99. When Ladybot was between 6 and 10, she had a really surreal dream that started out with her and her family all standing in the center of a circus tent, and the stands were all empty. Suddenly, a clown on a motorcycle started to circle them, like some sort of act, going in circles faster than possible. Everything but Ladybot and her family looked as though it was made of clay. The clown then stopped on a dime beside another clown. He got off the bike and picked him up by his neck. He started blowing into him, causing the clown to briefly have seams open up so that you could see a slightly smaller version underneath, but polarized in negative color. The clown stopped blowing, and he lifted the other clown. The clown was now deflated, smiling weirdly. Meanwhile, an invisible crowd clapped and applauded. Ladybot woke with a jolt immediately after that, and she still has no idea what that dream even meant. Number 6 was submitted by Fancy Rowlet 1215. When Spinal Palm was 6, he was at an old white house with a pink roof where his family was taking a tour. He ran off with his cousins and went swimming in a large, dirty, murky pool. Spinal Palm was in the pool when suddenly alligators would swim towards him, but he would escape just barely. Years later, he had another nightmare about returning to that house. there was a horseback riding event and he participated. His horse, a large brown one, was out of control and crazy. Spinal Palm was eventually thrown off and the horse retreated into the crowd. Spinal Palm watched in horror as a boy got his skull crushed by the stomp of the horse. A couple years later, he was at the house again. There was a fire at the house with his family inside, and he had lost the ability to speak. Number 5 was submitted by Hope Wolf 115. Andy Mations was at a friend's house watching a movie during a sleepover. Suddenly, a police motorcycle came up the road with its sirens blaring. They wondered what was going on, and they went outside to investigate. The policeman said not to go out because there was a reported pedophile nearby, so they stood there talking to him when they got snatched by the pedophile. He put them in his van and he gave them a blanket. He floored it with no warning, and the policeman desperately shot at the van. The pedophile was flying over speed bumps on the road, and then finally went around in a loop, coming back to the house. So he came to a halt, and he ran. Andy and her friend got out of the van and went into the house like nothing had happened. The police came up and insisted that they would stay the night outside. When Andy and her friend returned to the house, the windows had been shot, and the house looked like a mess, but they continued watching the movie anyway. The policemen would walk up to the window every now and then, and just stare at them with massive grins on their faces. Then suddenly, all the electricity went out, and out of the corner of their eyes, they saw the man approaching them with a knife and a body bag. Andy then woke up and ran to her parents' room. Number 4 was submitted by Astronomicat 4444. Talop had a dream where he was in a strange house. He walked down a corridor and he saw a weird man with a huge dog sitting next to him. Talop ran the opposite way until he came to a flight of stairs. He started to climb them until he got to the top where there was a dark attic. He said, "Hello? I'm not scared." He heard a low rumbling, and there was a horrific monster that started to chase him down the stairs. The monster caught him, and Talop watched in horror as it ate him, hearing the words of the man saying, "Night, night." Number 3 was submitted by King Joker 62. The worst nightmare that Pringle ever had was when he was 11 or 12. He was at his grandparents' house and went outside to check out a noise that he had heard. When he went outside, he froze. Pringle saw a wolf twice as big as him, with orange fur and glowing red eyes. The wolf stared at him, and it growled. Suddenly, it jumped on Pringle and started biting his arm. He screamed for his grandfather, but he didn't answer, so Pringle kicked the beast, and it fell off of him. He ran, but it caught up and started chewing his leg. Pringle screamed, then he grabbed a knife and stabbed it in the heart, but it only just got angrier. The wolf then suddenly jumped and it bit his throat, and that is when Pringle woke up, panicked and terrified. Number 2 was submitted by Kel Draws Too Much. Dolan, his mom, and his older brother were walking down a dark road at night. His older brother had a bouncy ball in his hand, and suddenly it bounced its way through a weird-looking gate. They walked through this gate to see if they could find the bouncy ball, but instead they found this weird gargoyle that looked like a pterodactyl without wings. It smiled as it handed the bouncy ball back to Dolan's brother, and then it bit his arm. Dolan's brother was about to scream, but he turned to white stone before he could. Then, it shattered into a million pieces. The pterodactyl gargoyle started walking towards Dolan when suddenly, he woke up. Dolan spent the night in his mom's room, and in the morning, he gave his brother a big hug. And number 1 was submitted by me. The worst nightmare that I have ever had is actually a recurring dream that I have had all throughout my life. The dream always starts the same. I'm in a forest, alone, wandering amongst the trees, when suddenly I would hear a noise somewhere nearby. I would look around, terrified, knowing what was about to come, as if sensing it, and suddenly it would happen. A massive brown bear would emerge from the brush nearby, charging right at me. I'd immediately turn and run as fast as I could, trying desperately to escape the bear, who would roar and sprint after me. I can't say why I've had this dream so many times throughout my life, as I don't really even consider bears to be that scary, but whenever I do have this dream, it always freaks me out. Alright, so a huge thanks to the folks over at our Planet Dolan subreddit for submitting their stories. But we have another question for you. What was your most frustrating experience trying to teach somebody something? Let us know in the Reddit page linked below, and you might be featured in a future countdown. It seems I must leave you now, mortals, but don't worry, I shall return.
Many of her female colleagues acted like he was disgusting, and she felt sorry for him, so she chatted with him. One day, they finished early, and Gooby's friend suggested that the four of them go for lunch, bad teeth dude included. Off they went,